Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Yupa Stein. 3 years ago, this project began with fiber artist Linda Helding's idea to create a show of wearable art pieces made from repurposed materials. I became the producer and artistic director of the show when it evolved into a larger project, which includes a variety of art forms, exploring environmental problems, and resources for solutions, all in support of a healthy, regenerative, just, biologically diverse, and vibrant Earth. I'm happy to introduce Britt Garner, who will be our guide through this two-part program.
Britt combines art and science in her own life as a performer and an interdisciplinary PhD candidate at the University of Montana.
Please join me in welcoming Britt. Hey Britt, thank you for being our guide.
Hi Yupa, and thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to serve as a guide for the Art for the Earth project because it highlights the importance of integration, cooperation, and action. In my own wildlife conservation research, I've found that combining different disciplines and fields of study is the best way to address the problems facing biodiversity today. The Art for the Earth project embraces the arts, culture, community, and science working all together. After all, in a world with interdisciplinary challenges, we need interdisciplinary solutions. The roots that connect the arts and sciences are nourished by our communities and cultures. And the heart of this project is to take action within our communities in support of a clean and beautiful environment. Our own state of Montana's constitution mandates this kind of work for the benefit of all Montanans, declaring that 1, the state and each person shall maintain and improve a clean and healthful environment in Montana for present and future generations, and 2, the legislature shall provide for the administration and enforcement of this duty. Supporting regenerative ways of living are critical for the survival of equitable, diverse, and healthy life. Our program will consist of 2 parts. Both will air live in Missoula and then be available online through the Art for the Earth Project Facebook page at facebook.com/buildingconnectionsforaction. Part 1 will air Saturday, November 21st, and Part 2 will air Saturday, November 28th. Both parts will air on MCAT, Channel 189 in Missoula, from 6 to 8 p.m. Mountain Time. If you'd like to follow along or learn more about each piece, our digital program is available on the Art for the Earth Project Facebook page. Like many events this year, the Art for the Earth project was intended to be shared in a live format. However, we are providing this virtual version instead as we adapt to the changes around us, just like all life on Earth. The specific community resources mentioned in this program are local to Missoula and to the state of Montana. However, there are resources available for everyone online and in communities all across the world, no matter where you're watching from. We encourage you to engage with your own community resources and learn about the projects and initiatives happening close to your own home. Similarly, we couldn't possibly cover all of the hardworking and influential nonprofits here in Missoula in our limited time. So we encourage Missoula residents to explore the resources and opportunities here as well. Our first piece is Ask the Water by Cecilia Elizabeth, inspired by questions asked by students in Cecilia's outdoor classrooms. It is a call to expand the conversation about environmental justice, followed by a visual poem about the fundamental element for life on Earth, water.
Hi y'all, my name is Cecilia Elizabeth. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a Montana-born outdoor educator and aspiring art activist. My work as an educator has granted me the privilege of spending much of my time learning with youth, immersed in nature. My art practice has become infused with the lessons and experiences of my time with students outside, being curious and attentive to non-human voices, building relationship and awareness to cycles of life and self. It is this wondering and presence which expands possibilities of living and of life. As we talk about our consumption habits, impact, and environmental justice, I believe it becomes more and more urgent to acknowledge the intersectionality of justice movements, such as Black Lives Matter, immigration, LGBTQ+, and Indigenous rights. It also becomes necessary to expand the conversation from our own species to include the trees, streams, wind, fish, to the water and ferns and falcons. This dialogue, this wondering and presence takes us out of ourselves and species, challenging us to observe and listen, to attempt to relearn the possibilities of being here in this beautiful, broken world. I am currently in Boyacá, Colombia, living near the sacred mountain Iguaque. This video and music was inspired by reverence for the crystalline waters in this region and produced on the traditional lands of the Muisca indigenous people. This project is a call to curiosity and wonder and excitement. It is a call to immersing ourselves quietly into a language and relationship we have forgotten, but one we can relearn.
Ask me, will the rain fall? Earth's cracking in the sun. Ask me, will the trees grow tall? Roots ripped at the seams. Ask me, will the lakes grow dark? Mud to dust. Ask me, will the fish still swim? I'm sure I don't know. But if you'd ask me, I'd say, go to the water, make your way, step into the water, flowing free. We can all be free. Ask me, can we make it far on these broken bones? Ask me, can we build again? I hope so. If you'd ask me, I'd say, go to the water, make your plea, step into the water, flowing free. We can all be free. Just ask the water, ask the water, ask the water. Just ask the water, need only ask the water.
Cecilia's piece reminds us to expand our conversations to include both human and non-human voices, and there is no more powerful connection between species on Earth than the water that cycles through our planet. Amazingly, the water cycle connects us to the Earth's history as well. In fact, a lot of the water we drink and enjoy today is older than the sun itself, and those water molecules were around to witness the age of dinosaurs and now the age of man. In Missoula, the presence of the Clark Fork River and River Basin infuses our community and culture. The Clark Fork Coalition is a nonprofit dedicated to creating strategic restoration projects for the Clark Fork River Basin. For more about the Clean Smurfit initiative, you can visit smurfit.clarkfork.org to learn the history of the site and current cleanup needs. On that site, you can sign the petition to Clean Smurfit now and sign up for e-updates to stay informed and involved. Next, we have contemporary artist Corki Claremont, who is a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Nation, reflecting on two pieces of work, Exo Hugs and Kisses from Fort McMurray and Coal Strip. These two pieces are from his Tar Sand Double-Headed Arrow series, and they explore the environmental impact of tar sands in Alberta and Coal Strip, Montana.
Hello, my name is Corki Claremont. I'm a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, and the place I'm standing was where my ancestors stood. This was our lands. And our people have always had a real close relationship to place, especially our lands, and all of our animal brothers and sisters, the trees, and of course our mother through her blood and her breath, which is our air and the waters. So these are all things that we consider very precious. I know a lot of you do too. But I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the work that I've done recently. And it's centered on environmental concerns that I'm sure, all share. And this particular piece here is part of a larger series of works called the Tar Sands Project. And it deals with the extraction of the tar sands in Canada near Fort McMurray. And the tar sands area that they're mining is over 50 square miles. And in order to extract the tar sands, they have to scrape off the top of the earth to get to the tar sand. And this is a very rich area, boreal forests, and it's the largest inland delta on the continent, which means a lot of the waters, come into that area. The Great Athabascan River flows right next to the development site where they're mining. And it takes a considerable amount of water and chemicals and things to extract and process that tar sands. And while they're doing that, in the mining process, they not only scrape, all the land off, which then eliminates the foraging, for their bears and other animals, and destroys the fisheries and things like that because it pollutes, the waters. And so it's just a real impact in that area. And of course it impacts us all because of it. So the images that you see here kind of talk about that area. This is one of the ponds that happens, or that the company creates, in the processing of the oil, tar sands oil. And it's very toxic. This is sulfur, and those sulfur mounds that are created from the processing are like Mayan pyramids. They're just huge. And you can see the size of the trucks here. This is a mining truck, and this is just a regular pickup truck. So they're very huge. You can see hundreds and hundreds of these trucks, hauling the ore. And this is a signage here that I thought was interesting. The sign says oil sands mining. No job is so urgent we cannot take time to do it safely. Suncor Corporation, Journey to Zero. Well, Journey to Zero, I'm sure they're talking about safety in the mining, but it also, I think, is a great reference on where we're going if we continue in this direction. And at the bottom here, the little sign I had put up little gummy bears because I was using the gummy bears as part of my impetus on the destruction of the bears. You know, they destroyed 150 bears right in that area because they no longer could find forage or food, so they're wandering into their man camps and causing problems, and also in the construction sites themselves or mining sites. So they had a great impact on the population up there. And you can imagine all the other animals too. But so using the gummy bears is kind of something to bring that awareness. And after getting back on this tour bus that I'd taken the next day, the tour guide said, "Oh, I noticed somebody was photographing gummy bears." And she said, "Well, did you know that the Suncor Corporation furnishes the lubricant to the gummy bear company so the gummy bears don't stick together?" Well, I didn't know that, but it fit right in with my project. And then the X and the O here, a friend of mine, Joe Feddersen, said, "Oh, there's hugs and kisses from Fort McMurray." Yeah, well, that's probably a good title, but it also was incorporated in a larger project, which was a tic-tac-toe game. So you could actually take these X's and O's and rearrange them in a tic-tac-toe game, which again is a commentary on the dangerous game that those companies are playing with our lives and our future. When I'd completed the basic tar sands project with Fort McMurray, I'd printed up what we call the double-headed arrow. And you see that double-headed arrow warning sign when you come up to a T intersection on the highways. And it warns you have to stop and make a decision which way you're going to go. So I took some of the leftover double-headed arrow images, which you see here in part, and began to take them around to other places that are sensitive to environmental concerns. This happens to be a coal strip. So you see images of the coal strip mine or processing here, and you see this double-headed arrow at coal strip. And I tore the original print in half, so I left half of that print at coal strip with little gummy bears there too. And I did a similar leaving of the double-headed arrow when I went to the Standing Rock protest site, and I spent a couple days there. But the Keystone Pipeline comes from Fort McMurray, and that's what the protest was in a sense about, is the possibility of having a breakage in the pipeline at that site and creating great environmental destruction.
Whether in Canada or the United States, the processing and extraction of tar sands majorly impacts local ecosystems. From the gummy bear to the black bear, these processes are all connected. For so long, there's been the concept of choosing between valuing the economic gain of tar sands and protecting the ecosystems in and around these factories. However, there might be alternatives that allow economic gain while still minimizing our impacts. New alternative energy jobs must be created in places like eastern Montana and elsewhere to make sure that we protect the needs of humans, non-humans, and the systems they live in. To learn more about state renewable energy resources in the U.S., you can visit epa.gov. Extraction and creation of new products is just one option when it comes to consumption. We can also reduce our environmental impact by reusing items instead of producing and purchasing new ones. Data from last year suggested that if all humans on Earth consumed the average American amount of resources, we'd need between 4 and 5 planets to meet our needs. Reducing this consumption is something everyone can do, and here in Missoula there are plenty of organizations to help you do just that. Home Resource is a nonprofit community sustainability center in Missoula, Montana, with a building materials reuse store and job training, education, and zero waste programs.
Home Resources' mission is to reduce waste and build a more vibrant and sustainable local economy. We're not a policy organization, but we did put together a zero waste resolution that was passed in 2016 by City Council. The meat of it is that we commit as a community to reducing our waste 90% by 2050. And that effort has become known as our Zero by 50 effort. A couple things that we know about zero waste. It's completely doable. We don't need big technological breakthroughs, but we know what to do, and we know what to do right now. So there are these nice, concrete, doable, tangible steps that we can take. Nobody wants to waste. It's just our job to make it easy for them not to waste.
Deep down in my core, I love the feeling of not putting things in my garbage can or filling the landfill. And so we try to live as green and as consciously as we can, so that way our kids inherit a great community and a clean planet.
We do keep 900 tons of material annually out of the landfill. We move 2.5 tons of material a day. And I like to say the dust never settles at Home Resource. So things are always moving in, they're moving out, we're sorting them, we're stocking them. And we just recognized that we weren't going to solve this problem of how much waste we produced as a society. We need to change the systems that help generate that waste in the first place. And we started a zero waste education program where we work with 5th graders. We call it the Zero Waste Ambassadors program. ZWAP! Knock out waste in Missoula is what we love to say. We teach them where materials come from, where materials go, and really emphasize that they have choices and that their choices make a big difference. We definitely see ourselves as a leader in this community, and we pride ourselves on that. Bringing up the conversation, making the suggestions, and really harnessing the great minds and energy that Missoula has. I'm just continually amazed at how collaborative we are here in Missoula.
We wouldn't have been able to do some of the improvements on our starter home if it weren't for the materials at Home Resource. We've been able to build our fences, a fence around our garden, a little bit of updating in our kitchen, and our chicken coop. Home Resource is just one of those places that fit into that circle of sustainability and making our community just more vibrant and green and wonderful to live in.
I see the ethic of reuse also increasing in Missoula, and that's not just us, but I know we've been a part of it. People think of Home Resource. Home Resource, I love Home Resource. I thought, oh my goodness, it's everywhere. You know, I took down my fence and I was sure, I mean, just crummy old fence posts, no one's gonna take these. And then I took them to Home Resource and your staff are so nice. And those testimonials definitely keep us going. Everyone is included in a sustainable community, a sustainable economy. All materials have value, all people have value. You know, it's a joy. We got a North Star, and that's 90% waste reduction, and come with us, help us figure this out.
Home Resource in Missoula, Montana is an excellent place to start when it comes to sustainability. And if you live elsewhere, do a quick search to find similar organizations in your community. Reusing resources when possible is a wonderful way to achieve individual progress that can add up to global change. It's easy to experience uncertainty or confusion around finding practical ways to make individual or small-scale changes. How can one person, one family, or one business contribute on a daily basis? We are fortunate to live in a community where organizations and companies transform the desire to be environmentally conscious into attainable daily choices. Right next to Home Resource in Missoula is another of these great sustainability resources, MUD. This is the Missoula Urban Demonstration Project, a tool library, demonstration site, and skill-sharing hub for sustainable living.
The tool library at the Missoula Urban Demonstration Project hosts an inventory of over 2,500 tools available for members to borrow, just like books from a library, for the price of an annual membership. By helping foster a culture of sharing, repairing, and reusing, customers become members, and buy translates to borrow. Providing tools to an entire community of users empowers people to be better consumers, encourages community engagement, and breaks down economic barriers to access, while also supporting Missoula's efforts to move towards zero waste.
The Missoula Urban Demonstration Project provides so many ways to increase personal sustainability. Everything from fix-it clinics to do-it-yourself workshops, in addition to offering a borrowing system for tools. I love learning about these resources in my community, and I hope that you're able to do so wherever you live. Next, we have a monologue by artist and activist Craig Mentier. Through his fictional character, Reverend Kenyon, Craig discusses taking responsibility for the climate crisis in Reverend Kenyon, Wildluya. Inspired by contemporary Native American writers, he asks the question, how do we break the Euro-Christian tradition of dominating the earth and learn to live in harmony with other species?
Children, I need your help. I want to build something in the world, something all-inclusive. Let's call it a house. This house will be non-institutional. This house will be uninstitutional. I'll go so far as to say this house will be anti-institutional, a non-denominational house. We'll call this house the House of Species Diversity and Wildlife Respect. Now, the House of Species Diversity and Wildlife Respect will not be a house of worship, but we will sing and dance and raise a ruckus. The House of Species Diversity and Wildlife Respect will not be making a platform for education, but we will be students of our fellow species. The House of Species Diversity and Wildlife Respect will not be making a case for management, for we know we are of this world and not above this earth. The House of Species Diversity and Wildlife Respect is 1, 2, 3, foremost and forthwith, a forthright celebration of wildness, wilderness, and all species. Wildalluya! The humble Reverend Kenyon presiding with your grace and plenitude. Children, there are a known 8,700,000 species on our planet. Our congregation here in the House of Species Diversity and Wildlife Respect. That is a lot of diversity, 8,700,000, and scientists think there may be tens of millions more. Our congregation, that is a lot of diversity. Maybe too much diversity. I fear that one species has lost its way. One species has gone astray. Or one species backslide. One species has transgressed. I think that one species that looks a lot like me has assumed. One species that looks a lot like you has anointed. One species, individuals of which look a lot like me, have anointed themselves as above all other species. They are us. Homo sapiens. Domo homo sapiens. No, that can't be. Oh, fine, just blame everything. Cancel culture, cancel all culture, and blame it because it's all made by white men. Well, can't we just fix everything, can't we just fix everything with technology? We are so screwed. I accept my part in creating this domo homo culture that we live in. And here in the House of Species Diversity, we come together in hopes that we can open our hearts, open our souls, open our eyes, ears, and mind to nature, and perhaps you will help, Mama Gaia will help us to a new spiritual awakening. A story. I was standing in a wood shop with a carpenter friend of mine, Skip, and we're looking at this beautiful piece of wood, a cut of lumber, and we're looking at it, and we're both just kind of looking at it, And suddenly Skip says, "That's why I believe in God." I was like, what? Kind of shocked me. I mean, really? Do I believe in God? I've never thought of Skip as being religious, but... And he continued, because it's so beautiful. I mean, how does that happen? Well, I myself, I would always thought of everything as being kind of spiritual, in that hippy-dippy way. But as we looked at that piece of wood, the spirit of the tree was talking to us. That tree that had been cut down, drug out of the wood, skinned, sliced, baked, and there it was in front of us. The spirit of that wood was still talking to us. So we come together in the House of Species Diversity and Wildlife Respect, easy enough for me to say, because we want to honor our diversity. So we have to ask ourselves in the House, how do we honor the other 8,699,999 other species that are members of our congregation? How do we honor them if we do not honor ourselves? We have to ask ourselves, are we safe without the diverse support of the other 8,699,999 other species that are members of our congregation? No, we are not. We know that now. So in the House of Species Diversity and Wildlife Respect, we come together to learn to honor diversity. How do you honor diversity? I don't know. I mean, that's not a rhetorical question. I am a domo homo. I was raised in a domo homo household. Sometimes that domo homo culture like clouds my mind and literally clouds my mind. Something comes right down out of the cloud, boom, and it logarithms me and makes me want to buy something, makes me want to do something sort of pseudo-sensual to somebody. And I don't need to buy anything, and I never want to do anything pseudo-sensual to anybody. So, how do we honor diversity? When my mind becomes cluttered like that, I go for a walk out into the world, and I tread upon the earth, and I partake of nature. And I try to find a path. And I want to go down a path right now that's inspired by a great American thinker, by a question that he asked, and a great writer and humanist, James Baldwin, and I paraphrase. How do we connect our private life to our public life? How do we take the succor, the passion, the love, the integrity, the honesty, the grace that we create in our home, and how do we walk with that into the world and make that connection? Walk down this path with me for a second, because when you go down that path, you will also face your own death. Yes, your mortality. And our homo domo culture tells us constantly, over and over and over again, that if we acknowledge death, we're not really living. But if you do not acknowledge your own death, then it is projected onto others. If you do not recognize your place in the life cycle and where we belong in the totality of the earth and living and dying, then your death is projected onto others as unfortunate inevitabilities, collateral damage. Respect! We all know what that is. Our mother taught us that one, right? We respect our mothers because, well, they gave us life. And we respect the earth because the earth gives us life also. What we don't respect, I think, is our own knowledge. We know we can't take from Mother Earth and not give back. It's bad economics, for Christ's sake. And can we finally say, white supremacy is not working? Christ knows how long. As a ruling paradigm for the last 2 millennia, white supremacy is not working. One more. The climate crisis is the colossal failure of free market capitalism. Yet, let us not place blame. For blame is the fuel of conflict. Let us sing and dance and create a ruckus. Let us save what we have. Children, I want you to put your hands on the screen in front of you right now and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the earth. I pledge allegiance to the earth. The only beautiful planet that sustains me. The only beautiful planet that sustains me. The rivers, the sky, the mountains. Clean air, clean soil, clean water. Non-negotiable. With liberty and justice for all species. Acknowledged. Hallelujah!
So how do we honor the other members of the congregation and take responsibility, as Craig's character asks? One way that I try to do this is by recognizing and understanding the main threats to biodiversity in the Anthropocene, or the age of man that we're living in right now. Some major drivers of extinction are habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, pollution, and climate change, and these are all related to human activity. But not all human activity is bad. In fact, the very human activity of storytelling can be used to reduce the human actions that threaten other species. Stories for Action is a media hub that uses the power of storytelling to cultivate a thriving planet.
Stories connect us as humans. Stories guide our understanding of the world. I'm Laura Tomov, and I'm a filmmaker based in Missoula, Montana. I grew up in the Bitterroot Valley, in the wild beauty of this place. I spent the last decade living in other states and traveling around the world for work with a camera on my shoulder, but I'm thrilled to say that I've moved back home. I saw negative environmental impact firsthand in far corners of the world, devastating biodiversity and communities. I knew we needed to accelerate actions that improved our human and nature relationship and to unite us around a mission to prioritize our environment for people and planet. We need to prove this is not a political issue, it's a human issue. I believe one of the ways to do this is through short-form visual storytelling. This year I launched Stories for Action, which is a media hub that uses the power of storytelling to share the human connection for a thriving planet. We have the solutions. What we need is the cultural will to change. By sharing stories of impact, positive actions, and showing the possibilities of a world where humans and nature thrive together, I believe we can accelerate actions for a healthy, regenerative planet for all. Here's a quick video showing the mission of Stories for Action's work. Stories for Action has 3 parts. We curate content from around the world. We produce films and photography that promote businesses, organizations, and individuals taking positive action. And we have the Storytellers Action Network. Right now, we're looking for stories from Montana. If you have a short video or photo depicting your story of positive environmental impact and a call to action, we want to share it. It can be high-grade professional or something taken with your cell phone. Go to our site, storiesforaction.org, and submit your story. We'll share it on our site and social media platforms. It can be a positive action that your business is doing, your ranch, your community, or even within your family. It can be a short film about your organization or a story that amplifies voices from frontline communities. We know that Montana is full of inspiring stories of bridging divides, innovative solutions, and communities collaborating. We want you to share those stories with us. When we share our stories, we reveal a common connection and prove that we can unite around ensuring a thriving planet for all.
Do you know a story about positive action for a thriving planet that needs to be told? The Stories for Action Network is currently seeking Montana stories. Find out more at storiesforaction.org/about. And if you don't live in Montana, not to worry. The Stories for Action Network also curates content from around the world, and you can join them from wherever you live. To me, storytelling is one of the most relatable and common threads between the arts and sciences. Both arenas are mechanisms of telling, and the only difference is what's used as the story itself, whether that's data or an oil pastel. The next piece takes a very personal storytelling journey using only a phone to create the piece. In Orphan Girl, Naomi Kimball reflects on the extraction industry in Montana. Naomi spent a year to amass photos and videos of trains on her walks to work, trains that primarily took coal from the Powder River that would eventually end up in China via Seattle.
The sky is coated with scurf the color of tin. Bands of haze hang at the fringe of the valley, giving the impression that the mountains have receded into memory. The air is thick and full of grit. A mouthful chokes me. A good storm would clear it, but the days are still and quiet as days often are under the bowl of winter. This air will be with us for a while. My perch on the bridge is 50 feet above the tracks where trains throttle up, sensing diesel into stands of smog. They stretch the length of the valley from east to west, sawing between empty and filled depending upon which direction they're traveling. The tracks are never bare. And perhaps some of the dirt I breathe is from the coal itself, or a bit of the prairie it came from that lingers in the air as full trains flow to the west. A dark river made of dark matter that empties into the sea. Coal is Montana's second largest export. It rumbles under my feet, courses and booms through the valley, as trains pulled to rolling bite their hitches, slam hook and eye one after the other, sounding like great inland waves made of metal. I feel a tremor in the girders, and the bridge sheds its pigeons. Sunlight turns a bit of the sky from tin to pearl.
Orphan Girl reminds us that some environmental issues have histories that are hard to imagine until we see their legacies directly. I maintain hope that the legacies of today can be ones that our descendants can be proud of us for, and that we can meet this moment and change the trajectory of economies based on extraction. One group working on these legacies is the Montana Environmental Information Center, a member-supported nonprofit organization that works to protect and improve the quality of life in Montana by defending the land, air, water, and life-sustaining climate of our great state, for today and for future generations.
Montanans want clean energy, not last century's dirty coal. For years, the Montana Environmental Information Center has worked to transition Montana away from dependence on coal and to stop the havoc it wreaks on our health. Our network of activists moves strategically, pushing Montana decision-makers like members of the Public Service Commission to do right by Montana's communities. During the legislative session, MEIC will advocate for clean, affordable energy for Montanans and for polluting corporations to clean up their acts. Learn more at meic.org.
Real change happens once policy is enacted and followed, and MEIC strives to lobby for the environment, protection, and strengthening of environmental laws for Montana. You can stay up to date on proposals with environmental implications at the Montana legislature by using MEIC's website and its up-to-date bill tracking system. Now, environmental laws as we know them are written by humans. But what might a policy conversation look like with non-human participants? In Council of Beings Against Oil and Gas by Linda Eichwald, we explore a sculpture with creatures of the earth in council with a figure representing fossil fuels. In reflecting on her piece, Linda writes, "Why harm the earth and all her inhabitants if we can open ourselves to new options? There are less harmful ways to make our energy. We can work with life, not against it. We are a necessary component of the solution, but we need to let our voices be heard through our lifestyle, buying practices, and political voice." While this piece gave us a new medium to consider, the theme it presented is a common one within our project, that humans are part of the problem, but that we can absolutely be part of the solution. Rapid human-induced climate change is a major driver of biodiversity loss, and part of being a piece of the human solution is minimizing the carbon emissions that contribute to this threat. Climate Smart is a nonprofit organization here in Missoula that engages our community in climate actions, catalyzing efforts to reduce our carbon footprint and build a resilient city.
At Climate Smart Missoula, we work to reduce our carbon footprint and build an equitable and resilient Missoula.
The climate crisis is enormous. What can we do? Take positive action. Bike or walk more, eat more plants, or go solar. Use your voice. Vote for climate leaders. Demand strong policies.
Bring others along. Contribute to our Footprint Fund, which helps low-income Missoulians.
Join us. Learn more at climatesmartmissoula.org.
You may have noticed that on the day that Climate Smart Missoula shot the video, the Missoula Valley was filled up with smoke, likely from wildfires burning in California and Oregon. Climate Smart collaborates to build networks to help us navigate and mitigate the consequences of the climate changes we are experiencing. One of the programs they're launching is a local carbon offset program called the Missoula Footprint Fund. An offset is a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in one place that can be used to compensate for emissions elsewhere. For example, you can offset the emissions from a plane flight by giving money to a project that will improve the energy efficiency of a home, which would not have been done otherwise. Offsets are not a perfect solution to solve the climate crisis, but they are one way that businesses and individuals can reduce their impact, and Climate Smart's Footprint Fund is unique because the offsets keep dollars local and support projects that benefit low-income Missoulians. Learn more at MissoulaFootprintFund.org. Other climate action groups in Missoula are hard at work as well. For more information, you can search Sunrise Movement Missoula, 350 Montana, and Families for a Livable Climate. While all life on Earth is hardwired to adapt and evolve, the current changes happening to our climate are progressing too rapidly for many species to adapt. However, some species are actively removing carbon emissions from the atmosphere as a part of their everyday lives. So we'd be remiss to mention climate change advocacy without bringing trees into the mix. Every year, forest and other wood products take up more than 14% of carbon dioxide emissions in the United States economy-wide, and we could potentially increase this capacity by about 20% by strategically planting trees. Trees for Missoula is an advocacy group committed to the belief that individual trees and the urban forest are a critical element of a livable urban environment. This next piece talks about some best practices for trees and the urban environment.
Oh, hi! I'm Karen Sippy with Trees for Missoula, and I am in downtown Missoula at the Missoula Art Park, here between Missoula Art Museum and Adventure Cycling. And this was created in 2016 to be a rotating outdoor art gallery. Currently on display are Jay Labor's Res Rex. He's a Pikuni Blackfeet artist that just recently passed, and we're lucky enough to have his works and his collection here at the Missoula Art Park. Now, what most people don't realize is that this is also a site for urban forestry, best practices, and latest technology. Hey tree, this is a Pacific sunset maple, and this tree is thriving and healthy and happy because it has a suspended pavement system underneath us. This little plaque describes what a suspended pavement system is, and it provides a ton of soil, non-compacted soil space, irrigation, and nutrients so that this tree can thrive and grow and become a full-size maple tree in the middle of downtown Missoula. Comparatively, this tree, also a Pacific sunset maple, from the same rootstock, the same nursery, planted at the same exact time, in the same soil type, is not thriving. And the reason it's not thriving is because it does not have the suspended pavement system underneath this concrete. It's confined to this space, and you can see the difference. Now back here, across the street, is another example of a best technology for urban forestry practices, and that's shared boulevard green space. Those trees are sharing same soil in that large space, and those trees are also a smaller species size and don't require as much soil. Another example of best practice in urban forestry at the Missoula Art Park is right tree, right place. The tree behind me is a serviceberry, and it won't grow much taller than it already is, and therefore it won't be needing to be pruned into an unnatural shape and interfere with our power lines. Also, every tree in the Missoula Art Park is irrigated, which is an absolute necessity in the semi-arid Northwest Rocky Mountain region. So the next time you take a walk downtown Missoula, please stop by the Missoula Art Park and take a nice look at the beautiful artwork that they have down here, but also stop and take a look and think about our beautiful trees.
If you're interested in getting directly involved with Trees for Missoula, there are several volunteer opportunities, including their volunteer tree pruning and tree planting programs. Trees for Missoula holds tree planting volunteer events every September and October. The next piece is My History of Trees by Leslie Van Stavern-Millar. Leslie wrote about her piece, I am a visual artist who has identified with trees my entire life. My History of Trees is a brief personal narrative in video form about my evolving understanding and appreciation for trees.
Trees. I love trees. Trees evolved 400 million years ago. Humans, 5 million years ago. When I was born in 1950, there were 2.5 billion people living here. Now there are almost 8 billion. These statistics are what have motivated me as a visual artist who has been thinking about trees, looking at trees, drawing trees, painting trees, planting trees, sometimes transporting trees, and reading about them to create a tribute to trees, 4 little chapters, visually oriented snapshots that will follow, to describe the evolution of my awareness and appreciation of trees that has motivated me to very specifically advocate on their behalf and to urge everyone to pick out a non-human species with whom you would like to share the planet, because our life is enriched and deepened by this experience. Chapter 1, Baltimore, 1954. Pink Blossom. I was 4 years old, and my family was living in a neighborhood of established single-family dwellings. And I was the oldest kid in my family, and so my mom was really preoccupied with my younger siblings. And I took advantage of this, probably in the spring or early summer, to cross the street, to cross the road to the other side and explore. And in doing that, I came across a small tree, fruit tree probably, and it was in full blossom. It was beautiful. I reached up and I snapped off one of these pink blossoms and went home. Now, my sense of time at that age was really not well formed. And so fast forward to the next opportunity I had to elude my mom's watchful eye, which was probably in September or October and possibly November. And I again crossed the street and went back to the same tree and was horrified to realize that the tree appeared to be dead. It had no leaves. It had no blossoms. It was a skeleton. And I felt and experienced great remorse and guilt for thinking that I had led to the death of the tree. And this experience, as somber as it sounds, it's something I never talked about with my family, but it led me at that time to develop a sense of connection and awareness of trees, a desire to protect them and inflict no harm. And I've carried that experience with me my entire life, and it has awakened my interest in trees to such an extent that it determines many of the decisions I make. Chapter 2, Abadan, Iran, 1957 to 1960. Date palm. My family had moved overseas. We left the lush forest of the eastern seaboard, which were predominantly deciduous trees, and flew to a country that was populated with palm trees and was very dry, and there was large, low bodies of water. And I began to read. I was in second grade. I started reading fairy tales. I started reading myths. I heard about the Bible. And I realized that we were living in an area that had historically been the Garden of Eden. This made a strong impression on me, and I began to incorporate a sense of the diversity of trees and identified with the palm trees. And so I also began to draw repeatedly different images. And when I would sign my artwork or sign a letter, I would put my initials, LVSM, and then I would very delicately draw a rendition, quite small, maybe an inch high, of a palm tree. This was my signature. Chapter 3, South Hadley, Massachusetts, 1968 to 1972. Purple Beaches. I arrived on the campus of Mount Holyoke College as a young woman and was immediately taken by the beauty of the campus, and especially the trees that abounded. These were large, established trees, well cared for, that I was delighted to begin to be really familiar with, especially because they had taken the practice of labeling the trees with both the Latin name and the common name. And so in particular, there was a very, very large purple beech tree that was adjacent to the art building. And that tree had an enormous trunk. It had an enormous crown, and the leaves were a beautiful color, and the bark had lots of definition. So I began to identify with this tree as part of my art identity. And then coincidentally, the new art building, which was built the last year I was at the school, had a ginkgo tree in front of it. Now, the ginkgo trees are like one of the oldest tree forms that exist. that still exist. And that was quite eccentric, and it was small, and they can live for a very long time. So between the purple beech, which had great majesty, and the ginkgo that seemed kind of eccentric, those two trees became emblematic for me. And I carried that consciousness that was really pinpointed by the labeling process with me as I left and became an adult artist and forged my way through to Montana. Chapter 4, Arlee, Montana, 1972 onwards, the wisdom of the mystic masters. So I came west, I came to Montana, and I was startled to realize that the hillsides in this part of the state were just completely covered with trees. These were evergreen trees. They had little pointy needles. They didn't drop. They all looked the same, in my opinion. And I found it very difficult to adjust. In fact, I almost considered moving back to the East Coast to be around my beloved deciduous forest in that first year or two. And luckily, I did not do that. And so over time, with more familiarity and getting out into the outdoors, I became more aware of the individual nature of these trees, and especially the older trees, the tall trees, the trees that showed the mark of living on the land and the effect of the weather and the effect of man, the effect of the seasons. And so I am befriended now of several elderly ponderosa pine that live on my property, and I have given them names. These are not names on labels. These are names in my head. And this was partly prompted by an experience in the 70s where I read a book called The Wisdom of the Mystic Masters. I was living on the Jocko River, and there were lots and lots of pine and fir trees in my immediate vicinity. And the Wisdom of the Mystic Masters urged you to go and touch the needles with the tip of your fingers and stand there and draw the energy from the tree, and that this would have a healing influence, which I will do to this day when I'm in periods of stress or needing strength. So this helped me adjust. I have been fortunate to not only incorporate trees into my artwork my entire life, and especially as an adult artist, and use that as a subtle form of activism. But the older I get and the more I'm seeing the impact of humans on the landscape and the world biosphere, it is prompting me to take direct action to protect these critical components of our life's experience. I look at trees as friends that have provided us with shelter, provided us with warmth, with food, with structures, with all sorts of beauty that enhances our life to such a great an extent. And so in that awareness, I am moving further and further into a situation where I am actively speaking on their behalf.
There is so much work to be done that it can sometimes feel overwhelming. Each person can't possibly do everything, but Leslie reminds us that when we connect to a species and choose to advocate for it, we can focus our efforts and take care of a piece of the environment that is close to our own heart. And that brings us to our final part 1 piece of the Art for the Earth project. Outside Ourselves is a poem by Caitlin Lewis about connecting to the natural world through inner work.
My name's Caitlin Lewis, and I was originally inspired to write this poem while I was out hiking one day. I was thinking to myself, what is an answer that an individual can do to help solve the environmental crisis? And this is the answer I came up with. So my poem is called Outside Ourselves. Here it goes. We are in a snow globe, inside looking out. Take a look around. In a world where we look out, we see a crisis, we touch the flames, we smell disease, and we feel the pain. Take a look around. Who here is to blame? A world that looks out becomes a cage filled with doubt. But in a world where we look in, we see harmonious connections. We touch hearts before hands. We smell the sweetest of confections. And we feel deeply connected to our lands. When we look in, there is no more doubt, no more seeking out. So break the glass, let the pieces fall, fake snow and all. Let fear pass and take a look around. It's time to see ourselves and begin again. Maybe you're confused, misused, bruised, discouraged, lost, but at what cost? We cannot solve a problem from the outside in. We have been taught this time and time again. Both the issue and the solution must come from within. If you don't like the outcome, begin again. Head towards the mountains and the countless trees, to the rivers on bended knees. Welcome the silence. Commune with you, something we rarely do. Capture the moments you feel within, and remember to rejoice in the simple wins. Find your voice and begin again. Take a look around. Learn from the land. Once balanced, lend out your hand. Slow goes the steady road, but one day you will make it home. So once there, take a look around. See beauty, touch strength, smell tranquility, and feel passion for all things. From the outside, looking in, reach out, become nothing, and begin again.
Caitlin's poem asked us to consider environmental problems starting within and moving outward. In a time in need of transformative change, we must all start somewhere. Taking the smallest steps toward change can only begin when we know our own place in the problem and solution. Thank you so much for watching part 1 of the Art for the Earth project. Make sure to watch part 2 live next Saturday, November 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. Mountain Time. It includes the premiere of Going, Going, Gone, Last Call for 5 Birds by Emily A. Clubb and Amy Ragsdale, a suite of poems, songs, and dances telling the stories of extinct and endangered birds. You can learn more about this piece and all of the others in our virtual program, available on the Art for the Earth Project Facebook page. There you can also find links to both parts of the project after they air live. Primatologist Jane Goodall has said, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." What you do matters, and we are in this together on our precious blue planet. We hope you stay safe, and thank you for watching. Let's connect again in part 2.